Measurement is the process of assigning numbers to the attributes or basic trait possessed by persons, events or set of objects according to specific rules. Educational measurement is the assignment of numerals/numbers to such traits as achievement, attitude, age, gender, performance, etc. It is limited to quantitative description of items, events, persons or object. It answers the question how much. Evaluation according to Stufflebeam, 1973, is the process of delineating, obtaining and providing useful information for judging decision alternatives. Evaluation in educational setting. It is the process of collecting and analyzing information to judge the worth or effectiveness of teaching and learning outcomes. The main concern of evaluation in the classroom is to arrive at a judgment on the quality, worth or effectiveness of teaching and learning. It is the qualitative description of items, events, persons or object types of evaluation. Formative evaluation. It is the process of judging the worth of teaching and learning constantly and continuously during the period of instruction. It requires the gathering of detailed information on frequent occasion through such means as teacher observation, classroom questions, home assignment and other assessment tools, continuous assessment. The main purpose of formative evaluation is to provide feedback to both teacher and the learner about the progress being made. Summative evaluation. It is the process of judging the worth of teaching and learning at the end of the period of instruction. It is judgmental in nature. It attempts to determine to what extent the broad objectives have been attained. It provides feedback to the teacher to effect promotions and demotions based on students' performance, decision. Examples are, end-of-term examination, basic examination certificate, and senior high school certificate. Assessment. It is the process of obtaining information that is used for making decisions about students, curricular program, and educational policy. It includes the full range of procedures used to gather information about student learning. Test. It is a task or series of tasks which are used to measure specific traits or attributes in people. It is a formal and systematic set of procedures used to obtain information about how much students have learnt. In educational settings, tests include paper and pencil instruments which contain questions that student or pupils respond to. It answers the question, how well or how much does the individual perform? Examples of test are norm reference test, criterion reference test, aptitude test, standardized test, teacher-made test, etc. Forms of assessment. The assessment procedures can be formal or informal. Formal assessment. It is a conventional method of gathering and interpreting information about student learning and performance. It also implies using tests that involve standardized administration and that have norms and formal interpretive procedures. Example of formal assessment is standardized test or norm-referenced tests. These tests are used to assess overall achievement, compare a student's performance to their peers. Standardized tests. In standardized testing, tasks are presented under standard conditions so that a student's performance can be contrasted and compared to the performance of a norm group. Standardized tests are carefully constructed by test experts and the norms are established in the test manual. Norm-referenced test. In a norm-referenced test, a student's performance is compared to a larger group or norm. In a norm-referenced test, students, schools, districts' performances are compared or rank in relation to the group. In a norm-referenced test, norms are established to describe a test score in terms of its location relative to a body of scores that have already been collected. The normative group is made of specific characteristics. The characteristics used to form a norm group include age, gender, and socioeconomic status, etc. Types of formal assessment. There are various types of formal test. The few that have selected are the following: standardized achievement test, aptitude test, intelligent test, individual achievement test. Standardized achievement test. It is a test designed specifically to measure the degree of students' learning in specific curricular areas. Standardized achievement test assesses a previously acquired knowledge and ability. It helps in making comparison in achievement of all students in the norm group, school, district, etc. Example of standardized achievement test are California Achievement Test, CAT. Comprehensive Test of Basic Skills, CTBS. Metropolitan Achievement Test, MAT, and Standard Achievement Test, SAT. The local examples of standardized test. Achievement test are Basic Exam Certificate and Senior High School Certificate Exam Test, which supposed to serve similar purpose. These tests are norm because the results are compared across ages and grade level. Most of these tests are commercially available. It means that they are sold services. Aptitude test. This test is good for measuring knowledge that a student already has when entering classroom or grade level. It is very necessary for teacher to know beforehand the performance of the students for him or her to determine whether the student will succeed in the class or level. The simple test teachers conduct before accepting pupils or students to his/her class during admission can be said to be a kind of aptitude test. There are functional abilities and academic abilities when trying to understand intelligent. A person described as intelligent should perform well in both functional and academic ability activities. Intelligent tests are procedures used to assess both academic and functional abilities of the learner to deal effectively with his/her environment. Intelligent is measured using intelligent quotient, IQ, of the person. The intelligent quotient is a function of chronological age, CA, and mental/functional age, MA. IQ equals MA divided by CA times 100. Types of intelligent test. Intelligent tests are part of tests used by school psychologists to assess and evaluate student. The two most commonly used intelligent tests are Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children 3, Wisconsin 3. This type of test is considered the most valid measure of intelligence because it has both language and symbol-based items and performance-based items. Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, originally Binet Simon test. This test is designed to identify students with cognitive disabilities. Individual Achievement Test. These tests are useful for assessing students' academic abilities. They measure both pre-academic and academic behaviors. For example, they measure tasks from the ability to match pictures to letters, to more advanced literacy and mathematical skills. Informal assessment. Informal assessment is an assessment techniques that can easily be incorporated into classroom routines and learning activities. It can be used at any time without necessarily interfering with instructional time. It also means a procedure for obtaining information that can be used to make judgment about characteristics of children or program using means other than standardized instrument or tests. A teacher who assesses his students through the use of projects, class presentations, experiments, portfolios, interviews, observation checklist, etc. is using informal assessment. The results of informal assessment are indicative of the student's performance on the skill or subject of interest. Unlike the standardized test, informal assessments are not intended to provide comparison to a broader group, beyond the students in the class. Characteristics of informal assessment. Informal assessment are loosely structured assessment technique. Informal assessment are closely tied to teaching. Informal assessment do not follow strict procedure in area of administration. Scoring, interpretation, etc. Informal assessment is a process but not an event. It can be used at any time without necessarily interfering with instruction. They seek to identify the strength, weaknesses and needs of individual students without regard to grade or age norm. Types of informal assessment. Informal assessment can be categorized into two main groups. 1. Those that introduce test items and those that do not introduce test items. 2. Structured and unstructured. Structured informal assessment method. These methods are planned by the teacher. The scoring of structured assessment items is easier than that of unstructured methods. Examples are teacher-made achievement test, curriculum-based assessment, CBA. Unstructured informal assessment. These assessment methods are more difficult to score and evaluate, but they can provide a great deal of valuable information about the skill of students. Examples are observation, interview, and ecological assessment. Informal assessment techniques that utilize test items. In this type of test, students are expected to take a test to determine their academic needs. The various types include teacher-made achievement tests, criterion reference test, curriculum-based assessment and performance assessment. Informal assessment techniques that utilize test items. In this type of test, students are expected to take a test to determine their academic needs. The various types include teacher-made achievement tests, criterion reference test, curriculum-based assessment and performance assessment. Teacher-made achievement tests. Teacher-made achievement tests are classified as structured informal tests. This form of assessment introduces test items, and the students are expected to take the test, paper and pencil or pen. Achievement test measures knowledge acquired from teaching and learning situation. It measures the degree of student learning in specific curricular areas in which instruction has been received. Criterion reference tests, CRT. When a teacher designed a test to measure students' performance against a certain standard, then the teacher is adopting criterion reference test. Criterion reference test compares a student's performance with a criterion of mastery of a specific task or skill in respective of the student position or standing in a group. When the student performance meets the criterion, the implication is that he or she has mastered the expected task or skills. Examples of criterion reference test in Ghana are the School Assessment Examination, SAE, and the National Educational Assessment, NEA, which are administered by Ghana Education Service every year, National Standardized Achievement Test, NSAT. The purpose of these tests is to obtain information on students' mastery of the content. In CRT, the student is only judged either pass or fail. Another typical criterion reference assessment is the Teacher Certificate A examination. The criterion was that a trainee who was able to score 40% of any test has passed, and the scores below 40% are considered as fail. The interpretation is that any person who scores 40% in a test is assuming has mastered the basic and specific task or skills of teaching, and he or she is capable to teach. The popular slogan then was what 90% will do, 40% can also do same. Curriculum-based assessment. The concept curriculum refers to all learning activities that go in the school. It also refers to the subject studied and the entire program designed for the school. Curriculum-based assessment uses actual curriculum as the standard, and it provides a basis for evaluating and modifying the curriculum. It serves as the standard for individual students. Curriculum-based assessment can serve the following purposes: identification, eligibility, instructional, grouping and programmed evaluation. This technique of assessment makes use of both test and non-test procedures. Performance assessment. This type of assessment allows students to exhibit what they are capable of doing in real situation. Teacher gathers data about students' performance through observation and rating. Performance assessment is useful in subjects areas such as art and music and dance, drama, physical education, etc. This type of assessment is frequently used in early childhood and special education. This is because preschoolers, kindergarten, and those living with disability are limited in their communication skills. Therefore, by observing their performance, information about the child can be obtained. Informal assessment tools that do not utilize test items. These assessment tools do not require the student to respond to any test items. That information can be obtained from other sources outside the child or student. The source of information includes parents, teachers, media, and others who are associated with the student. Ecological assessment. This type of assessment focuses on the student's interaction with the environment rather than child-related issues. We are talking about factors that can influence an individual assessment score or performance, and they include peers, parents, mass media, community, teacher, and other factors that can have influence on the performance of an individual or student. In an assessment, there is the need to go beyond the child to assess other factors which are outside the child and have potential influence on the child behavior or learning. Rating scale. Scenario: in the last year inter-school sports competition, your school needed only 18 students to represent the school. How were the players selected? To select the 18 players, there's supposed to be some kind of assessment. The players have to play among other students and observed for some time, rated on a scale, and considered to be the best among their colleagues. The method used to select the players through observation and rating is called rating scale assessment. Rating scale is an assessment technique often associated with observation of a student's work or behavior. It does not consider the presence and the absence of a behavior or skill. The teacher subjectively rates each item according to some dimension of interest. Each element may be rated on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 representing the highest level of performance. For example, B students' performance are rated on A, B, C, D, E, F, with A representing the highest performance. Senior high school certificate apply A1, B2, B3, C4, C5, D6, D7, E8 and F9, with A1 being highest performance and F9 representing the lowest performance. Other examples are excellent, very good, good, poor, and very poor. A popular rating scale used by researchers is the Likert scales i.e., strongly agree, agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. Checklists. Scenario: I hope we all go for shopping when the month ends. What do you do before you set off? I suggest that you will go through the following processes. You will prepare a list of the items to be purchased at the market. You will tick the listed items any time you bought them. At the end of the shopping, you will account for the items purchased and at the same time the item you were unable to buy. This procedure is called checklist. In the classroom situation, the teacher will make a list of the tasks each individual is expected to perform or the skills expected to master at the end of the academic year or period. In assessing the students, teacher indicate by ticking the tasks that an individual can perform or skilled mastered. Checklists specify student behaviors expected during progression through the curriculum. The items on the checklist may be content area objectives. A checklist is considered to be a type of observational technique. The observers check only the presence or the absence of the behavior. Checklist documents students' rate of accomplishment within the curriculum. Questionnaires. It is a quick way of collecting information from a large population. Questionnaire is a self-report assessment device on which students can provide information about areas of interest to the teacher. Questionnaire items can be written in a variety of formats. It may be a forced choice, close-ended, thus, response alternatives are provided, or open-ended e.g. students answer questions in their own words. Questionnaire is a written form of interview. For questionnaire to provide accurate information, students should be able to read the item, have information to respond to the items, and have the writing skills to respond. Interviews? Interview is an informal assessment. It is a common phenomenon in the educational system. Many institutions conduct interviews to select applicants. Interviews are often used to gather information from parents, teachers, students and professionals. Interviews are the oral equivalent of questionnaire. Dealing with students who have academic difficulties, interviews are usually preferable to questionnaires. In the use of interview to assess a student, the value of the response from the student depends on the student accuracy. Poor memory of the past events, inadequate interpretation of current observations, faulty judgment and lack of veracity can result in poor information. Interviewing requires the use of observation and interviewing techniques, knowledge of the curriculum area under assessment, and the types of cognitive strategies that students are likely to employ in various types of tasks. For interview data to be valid and reliable, the interviewer should prepare interview guide to ensure that all interviewees get the same or equivalent questions. Observation. Most of us employ observation in many occasions. Observation provides information about event, object, and phenomenon around us. Good observation can yield enough data for decision making in classroom. Observation is the process of systematically recording socio and academic behavior in order to make instructional decisions. Observation forms the starting point of assessment, and it plays a pivotal role in teaching and learning process. In observation, the teacher collects data on the student by observing the student in the classroom, playground, or any other natural or clinical settings. Areas that teacher should consistently observe for potential difficulties are information processing, storage and retrieval of information, language, speech, vision, hearing, social and emotional functioning, and classroom behaviors. In observing children, teachers should focus on particular behavior so that they can determine possible patterns and causes. Areas that teacher should consistently observe for potential difficulties are information processing, storage and retrieval of information, language, speech, vision, hearing, social and emotional functioning, and classroom behaviors. In observing children, teachers should focus on particular behavior so that they can determine possible patterns and causes. Types of observation. Participant observation. In participant observation, the teacher takes part in the activities and becomes part of the group being observed. As the teacher takes part in the activities of the group, he or she records the targeted behaviors. Non-participant observation. In this type of observation, the teacher or the observer does not take part in the activities, but he or she observes the targeted behavior unobtrusively or not being noticed by the students. Observation can also be done directly or indirectly. With direct observation, the assessor is present and directly involved in the observation, while indirect observation involves the assessor contracting other people to do the observation for him or her. For observation data to be valid and reliable, 2 or more observers are needed. Task analysis. Scenario: how do you accomplish a complex task? We tend to solve a complex task in pieces or bits. For example, in studying a plant. When you are teaching parts of a plant, we start with the leaves, branches, trunk, and the root and teach it one after the other. By the end of the period, we have accomplished the study of the parts of plants. Task analysis is widely used in classroom activities. Task analysis focuses on curricular task rather than the student. Its purpose is to break down complex tasks into teachable subcomponents. Task analysis is the process of isolating, sequencing, and describing all the essential components of a task. This means that the task, or work given to the students, is broken down into smaller units so that the student would be able to tackle a unit at a time. The teacher then assesses the student based on the unit in order to obtain data on the mastery of that subunit. Work sample analysis. Teachers sometimes ask students to submit their old exercises. They go through these old exercises, essays and other assignments. This will enable the teacher to recognize the pattern of students' responses. In this type of assessment, the teacher collects the entire student's works that demonstrate what the student knows and is able to do. The student exercise books, artwork and essays can be assembled and analyzed to discover pattern of errors. The work sample analysis technique can be used both as a technique of teaching and also as an assessment technique. Types of work sample analyses. There are two types of work sample analysis. These are error analysis and response analysis. Error analysis. In this type of analysis, the student's work sample is analyzed in order to discover patterns of errors. These patterns of error can inform the teacher that the student is missing a vital skill. For example, learners who have a challenge to differentiate letter B and D. This information may help the teacher to develop appropriate instructional strategy to correct the error pattern. These errors are common in skills areas such as reading, writing, mathematics and spellings. Response analysis. In using this type of analysis, the teacher considers both the correct and incorrect, wrong responses of the student. With this, several samples of student works are gathered over a period of time, and the teacher analyzes them to determine the student's typical way of responding to instructions. Inventory. Inventories are pre-teaching assessment tools administered before instruction. They are designed to establish the entry level of the student. Teachers employ this strategy to find out what students already know before instruction. There is no fail or pass, and they mostly used as a screening device to assess certain areas of the curriculum. Probe. In seeking for more information from students in a classroom, teachers employ probe as an assessment technique. Teachers used to probing to seek more information on students' academic performance. Probe can be administered after task analysis. Teachers in a classroom ask students a series of questions on a particular curricular area, and their responses will enable the teacher to understand the students better. For example, if a student has difficulty in reading speedily, the teacher can increase the amount of time used for reading, and can employ the phonetic method. In using probe as an assessment tools, the teacher has to change some of the variables which may be the basis for which the student may be having a problem. Portfolio assessment. Scenario: how do you assess student in technical school studying carpentry or vocational school studying catering? To assess such students in these areas, students have to display samples of their work in the form of exhibition to tell the teacher and public about what they can do in their area of study. In assessment, portfolio is used to mean a systematic collection of works showing what the student has done over a period of time. For example, the teacher may collect samples of test, essays, artwork, and other pieces of work of the student. Portfolios are useful in documenting growth, effort and achievement. Reflective journals. A reflective journal is a personal record of students' learning experiences. It is a space where a learner can record and reflect upon their observations and responses to situations, which can be used to explore and analyze ways of thinking. Journals, although generally written, can also contain images, drawings and other types of reference materials. Purpose of reflective journals. A reflective journal is a means for learners to reflect on their learning and learning experiences in different ways. They are used to record the development of learners' ideas and insights, or those of a group in a given context, and can include concepts, ideas, and main points from experience and theory. Reflect upon the subject content and personal experiences as a means to increase learners' understanding. Analyze learning process for self-development. Usage of reflective journals. Reflective journals are used to explore situations from a personal perspective, but generally within the context of learning from students' own experiences. They are used to reflect on, in, and for action. Continuous assessment. Continuous assessment. It is a formative evaluation process concerned with finding out in a systematic manner the overall gains that a student has made in terms of knowledge, attitude, and skills after a given set of learning experiences. The definition implies that a student's final grade after a program of instruction is an aggregation of all the performances exhibited in the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains during the duration of the program. Characteristics of continuous assessment. Continuous assessment is cumulative. Continuous assessment is comprehensive or detailed. Continuous assessment is diagnostic. Continuous assessment is formative. Continuous assessment is guidance-oriented. Continuous assessment is systematic. Authentic assessment. Authentic assessment is the idea of using creative learning experiences to test students' skills and knowledge in realistic situations. Authentic assessment measures students' success in ways that is relevant to the skills required of them once they have finished a course of study or lesson. It is about measurement of intellectual accomplishment that are worthwhile, significant, and meaningful as contrasted with multiple choice test. Authentic assessment can be devised by the teacher, or in collaboration with the student by engaging them. Examples of authentic assessment are performance-based assessment, portfolio assessment, essays, and more. The purpose of authentic assessment is to provide students with ample opportunity to engage in authentic tasks, so as to develop, use, and extend their knowledge, higher order thinking, and other competencies. Test. It is a task or series of tasks which are used to measure specific traits or attributes in people. It is a formal and systematic set of procedures used to obtain information about how much students have learnt. In educational settings, tests include paper and pencil instruments which contain questions that student or pupils respond to. It involves the use of instrument or tool for collecting and gathering of information on pupils' achievement. A test of education is designed to measure knowledge, understanding, and skills in a specified subject or group of subjects. The responses provided to the questions help the test giver to obtain an estimate of the specific trait being measured. It answers the question, how well does the individual perform? Examples of test are norm reference test, criterion reference test, aptitude test, standardized test, etc. General principle of test construction. Table of specification. Table of specification is a two-way chart which describes the topic to be covered by a test. and the number of items which will be associated with each topic. The purpose of a table of specification is to identify the achievement domains being measured and to ensure that a fair and representative sample of questions appear on the test. Teachers cannot measure every topic or objectives, and cannot ask every questions they might wish to ask. A table of specification allows the teacher to construct a test focuses on the key areas, and weights these different areas based on their importance. A table of specification provides the teacher with evidence that a test has content validity, that it covers what should be covered. Item construction. This is the process in which specific items are written in accordance with the table of specifications. The test writer writes about 3 times the number of items required, and then eliminates some of them, leaving the number of items desired. Preparation of the test. This is when the test is assembled in the sequence in which the examiner wants the items to appear. The items should be arranged from easy to difficult. This gives the candidate the confidence in approaching the test. Instruction rubrics for the test should include the time allowed for answering of the test, the procedure for answering the test, the procedure for recording the answers, and other relevant information for the candidate. Trying out the test. After the test has been prepared, it is administered to a representative sample of people, similar to those who will take the completed test. Item analysis. This follows the test tryout. It is a procedure to access the difficulty level of each of the items, and also their discrimination power, how well the items discriminates between high and low achievers, as well as the effectiveness of the distractors. The item analysis enables the test writer to determine the effectiveness of the various items in the test. It also helps to identify poorly taught materials. Rubrics of a test. Rubrics is an explicit set of criteria used for assessing a particular type of work or performance, and provides more details than a single grade or mark. It is a scoring guide used to evaluate the quality of students' constructed responses. It helps a teacher to grade more objectively. Diagnostic assessment. Diagnostic assessment is useful in identifying learners' current knowledge, skills, ability, and helps to clarify misconceptions prior to introducing learners to a new learning area. The information gathered from a diagnostic assessment is essential for better planning of what is to be taught and how to teach it. Diagnostic assessment can take the form of pre-test of learners' knowledge and ability in a given content standards and performance indicator. It can also take the form of self-assessment against core competencies for the purposes of identifying areas of strengths and weaknesses. Use of short interviews of 10 minutes or less is another way to undertake a diagnostic assessment. Assessment for learning. It is an approach of teaching and learning that creates feedback which is then used to improve students' performance. Assessment for learning involves students becoming more active in their learning and starting to think like a teacher. The philosophy behind assessment for learning is that assessment and teaching should be integrated into a whole. Assessment for learning is ongoing assessment that allows teachers to monitor students' day-to-day basis and modify their teaching based on what the student need to be successful. This assessment provides students with timely and specific feedback that they need to make adjustments to their learning. Assessment for learning in Ghana schools or classrooms. It comprises 2 phases. 1. Initial or diagnostic assessment, and 2. Formative assessment. It can be based on a variety of information sources, e.g., portfolios, works in progress, teacher observation, conversation. It involves giving verbal or written feedback that is primarily descriptive and emphasizes strengths, identifies challenges, and points student to the next steps. Assessment for learning in Ghana schools or classrooms. It comprises two phases: initial or diagnostic assessment, and formative assessment. It can be based on a variety of information sources, for example, portfolios, works in progress, teacher observation, conversation. It involves giving verbal or written feedback that is primarily descriptive and emphasizes strengths, identifies challenges, and points student to the next steps. Assessment as learning. It is the use of ongoing self-assessment by students in order to monitor their own learning, which is characterized by students reflecting on their own learning and making adjustments so that they achieved deeper understanding. It is also used to develop and support students' metacognitive skills. This type of assessment is crucial in helping students become lifelong learners. As students engage in peer and self-assessment, they learn to make sense of information related to prior knowledge and use for new learning. Students develop a sense of ownership and efficacy when they use teacher, peer, and self-assessment feedback to make adjustments, improvement and changes to what they understand. Assessment of learning. It is the common traditional form of assessment, where teachers assess student by the end of the course or program. They use the assessment result to make judgment on the student performance or achievement. It provides report to teachers, students, and the parents to know how well each student has completed the learning task and activities. It provides information about students' achievement. It provides useful reporting information. And it often has little effect on learning. It is summative in nature.